Okay, time to find a new show to watch. What about The Expanse? That looks interesting and chill. I can make a game like this. So hi, I'm Alex and welcome to the very first devlog of Nova Protocol, a space simulation game where you build modular ships, manage physics and blow stuff up. In this version, we've got modular spaceships, dynamic destruction and lots of physics. Alright, so let's see how I got this entire thing to work. To make a space simulator game, we need some space, obviously. So first off, we build a simple test scene with a skybox and some objects that will represent asteroids and debris. Next, we need to add the player spaceship in the game, which for now is just a default cube. Right now it cannot move, so let's code a thruster in the game. Now let's hook up some inputs to apply thrust when we press the W key. And there we go. We can now move the ship. That rock is coming too close. Oh no! But wait, we can only move forward. Since we are using the physics engine to do the movement for us, we can just make use of the angular velocity to rotate the ship. So let's add some more thrusters and hook them up to different keys. We just need to make sure that the new thrusters will generate some torque for our spaceship. And now we have this monstrosity of a ship that can turn to the left and right. Now, while this is fun, it's very hard to control. So let's make things easier by adding a dedicated special spaceship section that will rotate the ship using input from the mouse. For this component, we will read the mouse delta, convert it to a rotation, and use a stable torque proportional derivative. Hey yo, is that how you actually say it? Whatever. PD controller to rotate the ship smoothly. Now we just have to implement that. So let's start with computing the required torque. We will have to define some constant. Shut up, nerd! And now that we have the new section, let's see how flying feels. Okay, looks like we need to tune some values a little bit. And now it works much better. At this point I was pretty happy with the spaceship movement, so I decided to work a bit on the visuals. So I created some simple models in Blender for the hull, which, I mean, it's still a cube, but it has some ridges. And then I added a cool shader for the thruster exhaust, which didn't take me a whole day to write. Then it was time to add combat. I added a turret section that you can just slap on top of your ship. It looks cool, spins around, and will actually shoot at things. First up, I plopped a simple model on top of the hull, then added a rotate head and a base pivot so it can yaw to the left and right and tilt up and down. Next, I hooked the turret up so it targets whatever object gets selected by the brain of the spaceship, which right now it's pretty much non-existent. Sorry Spaceship AI, you'll have to wait for another devlog. Then the hard part, getting the angles right. Whoever says that math is not needed for programming is clearly lying. After randomly using the atan2 function and some vector math, I finally got the turret to point. I finally got the turret to point where I wanted it to. Something I learned is that you really want to limit how fast it rotates or it starts looking like it's possessed. Then the fun part, adding shooting. I created a muzzle flash effect and set up a projectile to spawn when the turret fires. The projectile will move forward with a constant speed, and on each tick it will sweep a ray to see if it hit anything. And then just glue the projectile collision into the health and damage system, and we got our combat working. The turret hits, health drops, things explode. Yay! But hold on, that little health and damage system wasn't as simple as it sounds. At first I just made objects lose health when they get hit, but then I realized they should also explode dramatically when they die. So I added a proper health component to every rigid body in the scene, and whenever something takes a hit, whether it's from a projectile or from an impact with another object, it checks how much damage it should take based on the impact velocity. If the health drops to 0, boom. That's where I used the mesh slicer to get the destruction to look awesome. What's the mesh slicer, you might ask? Well, that's just a little system that I added to my game to be able to cut meshes into multiple pieces. That's gonna make them look like there was an explosion. So how does the mesh slicer work? Well, we take a mesh, we take the impact position in that mesh where we hit with a bullet or with another object, then we generate a random direction, and that's gonna give us a plane. And we take that plane, we put it through the mesh, and now we have to cut the mesh in two pieces based on the plane. So we take the plane, we put it through the mesh, we go through each triangle that's on the border, and we cut each triangle into 3 smaller triangles. And then we have to move each triangle either to the positive side or the negative side. Then we are able to split this thing into 2 smaller objects, and we don't have to forget to fill the bottom, otherwise it's gonna look weird. But with that simple script, which wasn't simple at all, trust me, it was painful, it was yeah, it was hard to get it working, but that's how we can get 2 smaller objects. And then what we can do is apply the same logic again on the 2 smaller objects, and then we get 4. And you know, it's like the bacteria meme that yeah, cringe, I know. And I mean, the objects will literally just break apart into chunks, and each chunk gets tossed away by some force, and it's gonna look like a real explosion. And now for the part that I usually dislike the most in game development or in any area, the UI. For the health, I just slap an ugly text box with a health percentage and done. But for the spaceship orientation, I wanted it to be very close to the final implementation, or at least the final idea that I'm gonna use. So at first I was thinking to add some 2D elements to show the spaceship forward direction and the mouse position, but that doesn't feel very good and you don't really have a sense of orientation. Sure, you can see where you are looking at, but in space that's kind of hard to know where you're gonna go next. It doesn't give you a sense of direction. So I thought maybe I can just add like a 2D arrow that shows you the direction you are going. And while that works a little bit, it's still missing something. It's missing the sense of depth because we are just projecting the direction of the spaceship onto the screen, and we are just modifying from a 3D space to a 2D space, so it's still missing something. It was missing this direction feeling that you get from a better HUD, or you know, being in the first person in the spaceship, which I mean, never been in one, but I guess I just imagine how it would be. And then I had like a really interesting idea, which was we have a sphere around the spaceship. Imagine that you have like a invisible sphere, and we can spawn stuff on that sphere, and this would kind of solve the depth problem, because if something gets spawned in front of the spaceship, you would have to rotate around to see it, so you also get the direction where it's pointing towards. So what I decided to do was to show the direction of the spaceship by using a small cone that's also using the shader from the thruster, shader from my thruster, and we just rotate this cone around the sphere to point in the direction that the spaceship is actually heading towards. And we also scale it by the velocity so we can see how fast we are also going, and that kind of solves the problem. I mean, it's still work in progress, but I feel like, you know, this idea with the sphere around the spaceship kind of works. Yeah, I think for now this is gonna be my best bet for a decent HUD that I don't hate, because I hate UI. I don't know. I just don't like implementing UI. I always appreciate nice looking UI, but man, I cannot do it for shit. So yeah, we have to deal with this kind of stuff for the UI. No, I mean, not that great with the UI, but maybe I can have better ideas in gameplay mechanics, so we might be able to avoid some of the UI work by doing better gameplay, hopefully. Like, you, instead of seeing everything in the UI, maybe we can make it appear more in the world than in the UI. I'm fine with that. That's gonna be easier for me to do, I guess. For the final touch, I added damage when you collide with stuff. But I think this is still a work in progress. It's gonna get some adjustments, but for now, you know, if it works, it works. Then I just put everything together into a demo scene, created a simple editor for the spaceship building, and we got ourselves the first version of the game. You can test it right now if you want to, link is in the description. So that's it for Devlog 1 of Nova Protocol. Thanks for sticking around. If you enjoyed seeing the spaceship move, shoot and mostly work, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. Drop a comment below. What spaceship section would you like to attach next? A laser cannon, tractor beam, or maybe something totally insane? Check the description for a link to the demo build. Go ahead, crash my game. It's a web build, so you can play it in the browser. You don't need to download anything. And I'll be back soon with more destruction, more ship parts, and maybe even some enemy AI. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. So, see you.